Thank you, Mr. President. I want to explain my vote. And thank you to Senator Bailey and our leader, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, for bringing this bill to the floor. Today, we are taking a bold and important first step toward reform in our system of policing, a step we must take to begin to rebuild the trust between law enforcement and the Black and brown New Yorkers they are pledged to serve. As someone who has worked closely with my local police departments, as well as police and other law enforcement unions statewide, this was not an easy decision. Nevertheless, it is the right decision. For years, I thought the incremental changes that I supported within the law enforcement community were practical reforms to address the problem. Like so many others, I thought encouraging diversity in police ranks, community policing, stronger communication between police officials and minority leadership, and enhanced training and tougher leadership that required accountability would limit the targeting of people of color and, in some cases, the terrible loss of life. I was wrong. We need action to change the institutional forces that sadly have brought us to this day. We cannot have our New Yorker neighbors, constituents, and others justifiably afraid they will be pulled over in their cars, accosted on the street, arrested, abused, or in some cases killed. We need change now. I have decided Section 50A of the Civil Rights Law, adopted over 40 years ago, can no longer be the standard for the release of disciplinary records of officers. Rather, law enforcement officers, like so many other public officials, must be accountable to the public in order for trust to be restored. While maybe well-intentioned so many years ago, the statute no longer protects the public or balances the public's interest against the privacy concerns that have been used to defend it. The Court of Appeals, as recently as 2018, in Nyclu versus New York Police Department, again interpreted the law so broadly as to fundamentally bar all disclosure of prior police disciplinary records. The exception in the law, which theoretically allows disclosure, is really no exception at all. In reality, under 50A, no one in the public can see an officer's prior disciplinary record under any circumstances. The bill we adopt today, which grants additional personal privacy to law enforcement from some of the disclosure provisions of the FOIL law, is a fair adjustment. It protects law enforcement from unwarranted personal disclosures and allows technical infractions to be withheld from the public record. This week, I spoke with the Distinguished Judge Advocate General, or JAG officer in my district, who struggled to find answers after the death of George Floyd. She thoughtfully reminded me the military sees these issues quite differently. While clearly imperfect in the military, there's an expectation that all officers are held to a higher standard. They have an affirmative duty to speak up and stop unlawful behavior. And the disclosure of information about prior incidents is actually necessary to ensure fundamental trust in the military system of justice. We should take this comparison to heart as we move to change the laws that have contributed, unfortunately but justifiably, to a fundamental distrust in our law enforcement system. This is a moment of national reckoning that makes me optimistic and determined at the same time. Optimistic because Americans of all colors, faiths, and ages are forcing us to look reality in the eye and acknowledge our system must change to confront and end racism in all its forms. However, it is a moment of challenge that only determined action can address. Peaceful and loud demonstrations in the streets of my communities and yours, in New Rochelle, White Plains, Yonkers, Harrison, Mamaroneck, Bedford, Bronxville, Tuckahoe, Portchester, and elsewhere are good. Demonstrations protected under the First Amendment, demonstrations in my communities protected by the police. However, they're not enough. They must lead to real reform. We cannot wait for incremental change and continue to rely on the prior innocent belief that simply the good officers would outweigh and outpower the bad. Demonstrations need to lead to meaningful reform. Sometimes change is uncomfortable. Sometimes change is not easy. Sometimes change comes with risk, even political risk. However, it is our responsibility as elected officials to make this change. The bill I vote for today and the others that are part of this package will be an important step toward this change. These bills will not harm the tens of thousands of professional, compassionate, and responsible officers I have supported, who have nothing to fear, and with whom I will continue to stand. However, it will change the culture of secrecy, the patterns of illegality that have been allowed to fester, and the legalized denial of accountability that have held us back for too long. In the process, we will move our state toward a more just state for every New Yorker, those whose skin is darker than mine, but those who are equally entitled to our system of justice for all. I proudly vote aye.